Forget hobbits. What really lived in a hole in the ground in Middle-earth? Subterranean dwellings appear with such frequency in The Lord of the Rings that it makes you wonder whether even the denizens of Middle-earth were being priced out of the property market by boomers. Hell, even the Abyss was considered a viable abode. Hobbits, dwarves, Gollum, orcs, dragons, spiders, balrogs. Just about everyone considered the ground free real estate. But what really lived in the deepest, darkest depths of Middle-earth? Had the dwarves been just that bit greedier? Had they delved just that bit deeper? Would they have come across a hidden horror so vast, so mind-twistingly incomprehensible that Durin's Bane itself would have recoiled in terror? Lovecraft, a controversial man, a pioneering author and founding father of cosmic horror, and yet a man seemingly behind the times, a man whose racial views in particular belong not to a modern world of science and understanding, but to an age of days gone by. He was, nonetheless, a product of the world in which he lived, a world caught between tradition and progress, and a society looking to fill a God-shaped hole with new meaning. The early 20th century marked a dawn of a new era for mankind, an era of science and a newfound thirst for knowledge. From mechanised flight to weaponised nuclear technology, in little over 20 years, human ingenuity brought about an unprecedented wave of progress. Such developments have led to unimaginable comfort and destruction, but at what cost to mankind's psyche? Has our increasing knowledge of the universe overtaken our revolutionary development? Lovecraft's work reflects this unease. Through his Cthulhu mythos, he explores what it means to be human against a backdrop of our ever-expanding knowledge of the wider universe. And herein lies the point of comparison with the works of Professor Tolkien, a man seemingly distant in motive and belief, but a man who too, like all great creatives, wrote of the universal human struggle and the nature of consciousness. Today's essay will explore the key differences and perhaps surprising similarities between the two men and their work, before uncovering Middle-earth's deepest, darkest secret. Lovecraft's legacy has only grown in the near century since his death. His work continues to inspire and depress in equal measure. It's perhaps even more relevant today, in an age of increasing egotism and existentialism, than it was when written. He died after all in relative obscurity. The key theme of his work, that of the human insignificance in the broader machinations of the universe and its impersonal forces, mankind's tragic fate as a sentient being in an unfeeling world, strikes at our deepest anxieties. Why are we here? To what end do we strive? And are we alone? This existential dread underpins Lovecraft's work, from the damp, dark, oppressive streets of Innsmouth to the seemingly barren desert of the Nameless city. The real horror of Lovecraft lies not in vast, tentacled behemoths asleep in the deep, but in a suffocating sense of unease surrounding one's place within the universe. Even when such cosmic beings as Cthulhu and Yog-Sothoth are introduced, it's in what they represent and not their form that their terror lies. Incomprehension personified, the fear of the unknown, the uneasy intersection between technology and the uncomfortable truths that it will surely uncover. Ignorance is bliss, or so they say. Such feelings are embodied and personified from Nyarlathotep, a time-splitting shapeshifter anthropomorphized in the guise of a pharaoh, to the less impressive and presumably fouler-smelling fishfolk of Innsmouth. The discovery of such cosmic entities invariably leads to despair, at best, madness in most cases, and even death, perhaps mercifully given the befuddled state of Lovecraft's hapless protagonists. They withdraw into themselves in the face of their seeming insignificance, unable to face the cosmic whole. It shatters their sense of self and grounding, bringing into sharp relief the reality of our relative position within the broader universe. What then does Lovecraft's work share with Professor Tolkien's? Was the former merely a cosmic doom-monger, a gloom-weaving pessimist, seeing only the eternal void, where the latter saw light and hope and a place for mankind? Or do their works have more in common than it would first appear? Born just 2 years apart in the early 1890s, the authors' backgrounds can help shed some light on their writing and their motivations. Prolific letter writers, both saw in stories and self-expression a chance to explore the human struggle as conscious agents, aware of our separation from the rest of creation. Both too shared a passion for the bygone Anglo-Saxon world, a world of heroes and legend, oft romanticised, and to both, a world under the threat of technology and modernisation. Pantheons of gods find a way into both of their works too, with man's relationship to the wider forces beyond his comprehension, a common theme. For all this common ground, the two men's lives and worldviews diverge at key points. Tolkien found greater worldly success, a celebrated scholar and author, a man with familial and workplace responsibilities, and a devout Roman Catholic, with a firm belief in the spiritual realm and the grounding connection it can bring. Lovecraft, on the other hand, outside of the literary circles in which he mingled, lived in relative obscurity, and seemed to find less peace in his time on Earth, troubled by intermittent periods of torment and anguish. His work speaks of an almost dehumanizing materialism, existence through matter without spirit. His world often feels cold and lonely and void of the earthly warmth of Middle-earth. Whilst addressing the same human condition, Tolkien's work seems to inspire greater hope in the face of potentially crippling cosmic dread. Instead of withdrawal, it encourages man to place his hand in the flowing stream of existence and to live with the consequences, not as a passive bystander, but as a conscious agent. Existence is localized in everything. Every being, across the spectrum of consciousness, experiences itself as a centre of the universe, as the here and the now. Lovecraft's work implies a sense of loneliness stemming from this realisation, a sense that man is a stranger lost amidst a foreign and hostile land. And to some extent so does Tolkien's. All of Tolkien's characters struggle with their sense of self, separate and distinct, and the key conflict stems from man's uneasy relationship with the cosmic whole, as in Lovecraft, and as with all works of art. For what is Melkor or Sauron or Feanor's motivation if not an attempt to solidify, extend, and indefinitely preserve their relative positions within the universe? The key theme of change, of impermanence being the only permanence, of the passage of ages, of seasons, of races, of generations, of individuals, it speaks of man's uneasy place within nature. For man is a creature apart, uniquely aware of his separation and of the consequence of action. All journeys begin with a single step. Frodo's quest to destroy the ring interlays powerful forces beyond his control with personal choice. He takes the first step, and the last, with a helping hand from Sam, and so becomes an agent for change within the universe. The humblest of beings, through one small act at a time, can shake the very core of existence itself. Man's awareness of this capability burdens him with greater responsibility. He must find a way to live whilst maintaining the world that sustains him and gives him life. Clearly the likes of Melkor and Sauron take this too far. In their realisation of their separation and their distinct identity, in coming face to face with Cthulhu, they seek to dominate creation itself, to preserve themselves at the expense of the interconnected forces of nature. The races of men and of hobbits and of all conscious beings face the same problem, and those living in greater harmony with the forces of nature seem to find greater peace. But given man's level of consciousness, with his ego inherently tied to his evolutionary development? Is this a realistic proposition? Can man acknowledge his mortality and seeming insignificance without being either paralysed by it or seeking to transcend it altogether? Tolkien's scholarly interest in Anglo-Saxon poetry, especially Beowulf and The Wanderer, sheds some further light here. The poems depict man's key dilemma. How is he to carve out an existence for himself in a hostile world? How can he stand tall when keeping the forces of nature that will invariably destroy him at bay? Grendel, the ill-famed haunter of the marches of the land, represents the forces of the wild, of nature itself, a medieval mind's Cthulhu, bringing ultimate ruin to man and all of his accomplishments. Awaiting the Golden Hall lay billows of destroying fire. Clearly man, if he is to survive, has to confront the forces that seek to destroy him, but to what extent should he carve out for himself and cling on to an identity distinct from the whole? How is he to find meaning as a sentient individual living amidst a seemingly unfeeling world? Even Beowulf's triumph is overridden by the passage of time. Like Ozymandias, king of kings, Beowulf too succumbs to the forces of nature. Every generation faces the same dilemma. After every Grendel, there lies another mother. After every Melkor, there follows another Sauron. Man cannot ultimately triumph. Nature will have its due, but that isn't to say that he should merely submit. He can find meaning in keeping them at bay, protecting himself and his kin for as long as he can. Beowulf, like Frodo, stands up to the forces of nature. He knows that death awaits him, but still he strives to uphold life in all of its fragility. Where Lovecraft's characters lose their minds when faced by their inevitable demise and seeming insignificance, Beowulf, like Frodo, finds meaning in his finitude. They are creatures of this earth and find meaning on this earth. They are not paralysed by their awareness of what awaits them, but instead face it head on. None of this is to say that Lovecraft advocated the deer-in-the-headlight approach adopted by many of his protagonists, nor is it to say that his work is fundamentally pessimistic or nihilistic, or that Tolkien's is only hopeful and optimistic. As with Tolkien's advocacy of conscious human agency, Lovecraft too finds a place for humans within the universe. Cthulhu's awakening requires not only the alignment of the stars, but also a degree of human agency via his followers upon their recognition of the signs. Man is not a passive bystander, but an agent capable of bringing real change to the world around him. He cannot fully comprehend the cosmic consequences of his actions, but he must act nonetheless. He may get no answers. He may find no broader meaning, but he can act within the time and space assigned to him. He can play with the forces of nature of which he is a part, and through this break free from his prison by accepting its bars. Thematic similarities aside, it's time to address the actual Lovecraftian entities lurking within Middle-earth's deepest crevices, the so-called nameless things gnawing at the very foundations of the earth itself. Mentioned only by Gandalf following his soiree into the depths of Khazad-dûm, these shadowy blighters have long remained a mystery to readers. Older than Sauron, dwelling deeper even than Khazad-dûm's resident squatter, they are given a seemingly throwaway line in the Two Towers. Some have suggested that the Watcher in the Water was one such being that found its way to the surface, but even then, their appearance, numbers, allegiance, and purpose all remain a mystery. Their origins and form are unknown, and perhaps unknowable. Some say they were created in the chaos unleashed by Melkor's deeds in the First Age, creatures of darkness akin to Ungoliant. Others believe that not even Melkor knew of their existence, concealed to all save Eru himself. Despite its brevity, their presence in the tale is important. What Tolkien seems to be hinting at is the unknowable nature of the whole of creation. Eru's creation has layers and depth beyond initial appearance. Who is to say what they are and why they were created? But there they are, and there they will remain, with perhaps an important role to play in the destruction of Middle-earth in the end of the days. Or perhaps not. They simply are. There are forces beyond our control and understanding. As with Lovecraft's pantheon of gods, superficially less human than Tolkien's, the true motives of Eru Ilúvatar are yet to be revealed. And it's up to us to decide whether this lack of clarity debilitates us, or whether we can live in the face of it. The cosmic unknown is scary. The ego acknowledges its annihilation. But in realising one's place within the broader stream of existence, perhaps one can find a greater level of peace than that managed by Lovecraft's protagonists. Just as Bilbo found when finishing his book. His part within the journey was over, but the journey itself continues. To shrivel before the cosmic whole, to lose oneself in the face of Cthulhu is understandable. But Tolkien's most inspiring characters find meaning in their struggle, and unlike most of Lovecraft's, and unlike his own manifestations of darkness and despair, in all its guises, lose not their minds, but rather their attachment to their sense of self. They come closer to letting go and finding peace. Tolkien's work does not, to me anyway, indicate whether or not he believed that man can rise to such a challenge, whether true peace is an attainable reality for man on earth, but instead depicts man for what he is. A force of nature, within nature, and against nature. Man must fight for his place, but so too must he succumb in the end and rejoin the broader forces of nature. He may not find peace, but only in accepting his place within the wider forces of life, by remaining grounded in the world around him, can he find the will to live and the strength to stand tall when confronted by Cthulhu.